everyone. Welcome to another Fifth Window live stream. My name is Kathy Schaefer. I'm a registered nurse and co-founder of Fifth Window, where we are helping nurses nurse their joy. And today we wanted to do a little bit of a different type of mindfulness activity, which is enjoying a cup of coffee. And so if some of you were with me when I did my Joy Jar, made joy jars. One of the things in my joy jar is really having a cup of coffee, but taking the time to really appreciate the different senses that I use to have my coffee, as well as the time I allow myself when I'm having my coffee. Today we're going to make something, my favorite kind of coffee, which is a pour over. And although you may not have all of these pieces that you need to make a pour over, we can talk about how you can substitute some of these items. If you're not a coffee drinker, definitely you can use this having tea, but it's just a different way of looking or feeling or enjoying something as simple as a cup of coffee for some people, but sometimes it becomes a very mindless ritual that we can actually use to kind of ground ourselves when we start our day having coffee. I first kind of discovered how to have a pour over, I will say, because this last year my husband and I took a coffee making class. The roaster, a local roaster, advertised it as learn how to make the perfect cup of coffee, a pour over. And we went to the class, and I have to tell you, I really learned again how to appreciate and really enjoy coffee after taking that class, because the different ways you grind your bean, between a fine grind all the way to a coarse grind, can actually bring out different flavor features of a bean that's been roasted, especially the underlying tones. And so I was sitting around having this cup of coffee, discussing it as if I was actually having, I felt like I was having a glass of wine. I mean, the richness and the flavor and the tone and the color of it was just really, it became very fascinating, and it became very almost, again, a ritual that became very mindful for me to do. And the one thing that surprised me the most is I don't put any kind of sweetener in my coffee, and sometimes I'll put maybe a little bit of a creamer, like an oat milk or an almond milk. But having that coffee the way that it was done did not whatsoever need any kind of enhancement. I could actually drink a black cup of coffee. It was that good, and it was a nice thing to experience. And so when we think about having coffee, which I'm sure a lot of you do, this type of coffee does take a little extra time to make. I'd say that my husband and I have it down pat where it can take us 6 minutes between everything to get ready and to have our coffee. So it might take a little bit of time, but thinking about if you are running out the door and you get your coffee somewhere else, if someone makes it for you, if you go to your local roaster, your local coffee shop, a Starbucks. Here on the East Coast, we have a Wawa's or a Dunkin' Donut. You can do the same kind of, I guess, mindfulness, they're not even activities, just mindfulness in order to drink and share and appreciate your coffee a little bit differently. Grounding is really important for you to be present in the moment, to realize, let your brain come out of a sympathetic nervous system into a parasympathetic nervous system, to understand where you are in time, you are okay in that moment of time, and that you are in control of how you feel in that time. So it's something that we can do no matter where we go. So first and foremost, I think, as with any good cup of coffee, is the mug you drink it in, or the vessel that you drink it in. I don't know, there's something about, you may have your own favorite mug, like I have my own favorite mug. You may have a couple favorite mugs. I have many favorite mugs, and depending upon how I'm feeling. Do I want a big cup, a small cup? Where am I sitting in my house? Do I even want to kind of remember maybe who gave me that cup or who I was with that cup of coffee? And it just feels so good. Maybe the way the mug feels. So we're going to pick out a mug today. And I actually am going to use this cup. Okay, so it's a cup called 1911. They make cider. They're in New York, the New York area. My daughter and I happened to be here at this establishment when I got this mug, so it reminds me of her when I drink out of it. It is a nice heavy mug, so when I'm drinking my coffee, I really feel the weight of my mug. So I really feel when I sip and savor every one of my last drop, right? The other thing I just want to say to you all is, so I'm here on the East Coast. It hasn't been the greatest of weather in the last 24 hours, and from what I understand, it's not going to be the greatest weather tomorrow or even moving forward. The cold weather is coming back. So to have a cup of coffee now at 1 o'clock in the afternoon here, I'm really, really looking forward to it. And so like I mentioned, we're going to be making a pour over. But when you are doing anything for yourself, you can do the same steps if you have these pieces of equipment. If not, we can, like I said, we can alter some of the things that I'm using so that maybe you can have your coffee a little differently. So we have a coffee mug, and we have some other things that we need to make our pour over. First and foremost, we probably should have, or I should have, turned my water on. So I have an electric tea kettle. That's how I make, when I get my pour over, it's right here on my coffee bar. You don't have to have an electric tea kettle. They make them in all different, price points, right? But you can have a simple tea kettle or a kettle on your stove and boil water. You don't have to have an electric tea kettle like I do. But I have an electric tea kettle, and it is set to my boiling temperature, and it will heat itself up while we are getting ready to make our pour over. And so the next thing that we need actually is our beans. So here's where the sense of smell comes in, right? So to me, there is really nothing better than the smell of good coffee, especially when coffee is brewing. And so when we talk about mindfulness and we talk about being able to appreciate in that time, in that moment, the smell of coffee, even if you're someone who, again, like I said, is going to have someone else make your coffee for you, like a local roaster or your local coffee shop, or even when you're going into Starbucks or that Dunkin' Donuts. I'd like you now, from now on, think about when you are having coffee and you walk into those places, taking that first breath inside a coffee shop and really getting the sense of smelling the coffee. And if you are somewhere where they have pastries, fresh baked pastries, maybe you'll get a little bit of a whiff of that sugar, because I actually went to the farmer's market today. Oops, sorry. And I got myself a donut to share, to have my share with my coffee today. So we need beans, right? Fresh beans are great. If you buy beans, I recommend you store them in a sealed container or a nice tight container, and they can stay up to 30 days in the container. I wouldn't, some people say, or I've heard people, they freeze their beans. You don't have to freeze your beans. The problem is when you freeze your beans and you take them out and they can get some condensation on them, and we don't want that to happen. That kind of ruins the flavor of your beans. So we need beans. If you are somebody who doesn't have the luxury, like I have, of having a grinder, which we're going to talk about in a few moments, you can actually ask your local roaster if they would grind your beans for you if you want to put this light, fine for espresso, or maybe even richer and having it like a coarser cup of coffee. They can grind that for you, and again, you can put them in your in a container and have them at your coffee bar or wherever you. So maybe you use a French press. Maybe you do have the ability to make a pour over, but you just don't have a grinder, right? Or maybe you're going to use the good old-fashioned Mr. Coffee and make yourself a pot of coffee. Nothing better than fresh ground beans. Okay, so we have our beans. The next thing we need is, I'll get these out here, is a scale. We need to weigh out our beans before we grind them. So this, you can buy these at any, kitchen store, anywhere you can go. Easy, it's a scale, and I think mine was sold under the guise that it was a coffee scale, but to me it looks like it's any kind of scale for the kitchen to weigh things. And we are going to be working in grams. So when you're thinking about making a pour over or grind your beans for your pour over, you need 1 gram of grounds to every 19 grams of water. That's the ratio, 1 to 19. We are going to be making a 12-ounce cup of coffee, so I've already done the math for us. We need 22 grams of beans, and we need 350 grams of water. So, like I said, this is the second part. You know, I felt the mug, right? I felt the weight of it. That was one of my senses I was using. I smell my beans. I'm really smelling now the coffee that I'm going to drink. I'm really starting to use my senses as I'm having this cup of coffee. So this comes, it's a little container to weigh your bean. So make sure that whenever you put something on your scale, you're always zeroing it out. You need to add something to our steps. So first we're going to measure out our beans. And I need 22 grams of beans. Just a little bit more of my beans. Okay, so if you are at home and you love tea, and you're going to take 1 bag, 2 bags to steep, or if you are someone who has loose tea and you put it in your little steeper bowl into your hot water, that's even great too. So however you measure out your items. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to grind our beans. Now, you don't have to have a fancy grinder like I have. This is on the rather expensive side, but they make them also at different price points where maybe you don't have so many dimensions of grinding. You might not be able to have so fine to go from espresso all the way to coarse. This particular burr grinder, you want a burr grinder if you're going to get one. I have about 30 different settings. And when you're making a pour over, something I learned in my class was it may take you a little bit of time to figure out what is the level of grind that you like, that you enjoy your cup of coffee. So being understanding that you might like it finer and really do make it an espresso, or maybe like a little bit coarser. If you're using the burr grinder, and on this setting, my setting's around 22. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my sense of hearing, right? So I'm going to listen, right, as I pour the beans in. So in the morning, sometimes my husband makes my coffee for me. Actually, he makes my coffee almost every morning for me, which I love. And I will hear upstairs as I'm coming down the steps, that initial kind of pour into the grinder. And I'm already getting a sense of I'm really happy because I know coffee is coming. Right? But if you're walking into a coffee shop, right? If you're not doing this at home, you've got to run because it's a work day and you don't have the time at home to make your coffee, or you've got to get your kids to school before you get to work, or maybe if you're caring for an older adult family member and you need to make sure that they're okay and you have to get your coffee outside of your home. Listen when you're in the coffee shop. Somebody is always grinding coffee. Or listen to the people talking, maybe the clattering of the mugs, right? Listen to what's happening around you. Just not, mindlessly walking in to pick up your coffee. Make it a habit to really feel and sense where you are. So I'm going to grind my beans. It should take a few seconds, not very long. It gets pretty loud. done. The one thing I will mention to you is this. I would, if you are going to get, if you don't have a burr grinder, don't get one of those metal grinders, only because if you do, it doesn't grind the beans up evenly. It slices them. So you don't get a nice grind to your coffee bean by using a metal one. So that's the one thing I would stay away from. That's why if you're going to a local roaster, why don't you ask them, and I think Starbucks will even do it too, for free, they'll grind your beans. So just tell them I have a pour over, I have a French press, I want to make espresso when I get home. Or maybe you even say I'm using a Mr. Coffee, so what's the best grind for that? So we have our beans all ground. I have my water that is boiling. And I'm now going to set up my coffee. So this is a little pour over. You need one of these so you can put your coffee grounds in it. They sell them in all different sizes. Again, this is something you can get at a little at a shop that sells kitchen supplies. Right? I think I've seen them in places like grocery stores like Wegmans. So I know that they sell them. I think you might even be able to find them in Whole Foods, sitting on the shelf there. And you need a little paper filter. And so I'm going to suggest that you buy the paper filter that is designed for a pour over. And I will tell you, I have bought these bamboo ones as well. I think they're probably the same thing. I don't know. But for some reason, when I use these, the water just goes flying right through them. And I can't seem to save my coffee from going through. So you just place your little paper container in your holder and you put it on top of your coffee mug. And I'm going to put my beans in here. I'm telling you, there's nothing like a really good fresh ground beans first thing. So my as I'm getting ready, I'm going to turn back on my scale because I need to go to 350 with my water. So the first things that you are going to do, and I'm sorry, but I'm taping myself today. I don't have the luxury of my husband taping me, or I'd have him sit over me while I pour my water in. But you're going to kind of pour in a little bit of a circle to get your ground a little bit wet, to about 50 grams. And the reason why you're going to stop there is it's now called you want your coffee to bloom, right? You'll see it. It starts to look like it's bubbling. It does look like it's a flower blooming. This helps release some more of the flavor into your coffee. So once you've done that and you let it maybe bloom for about maybe 5 seconds, 7 seconds, you then can start pouring. I pour in a circular motion, getting my beans even more wet and adding water to my coffee to about maybe 125 cc's. I'm sorry, I'm talking like a nurse. 125 grams. They're not the same. Okay. So, and while I'm letting the water filter through and make my coffee, I want to be mindful that it doesn't make this big crater in the middle. I want to keep it even because I don't want all of those grounds to be up against the sides of my paper filter. So this whole ritual of adding the water to your pour over, they say should take about 3 minutes, right? 2.5 to 3 minutes. And I pretty much, I used to use a timer before, but I don't use a timer anymore. And I would say that I'm pretty accurate almost all the time that it takes me 3 minutes to do this part. So you can see why this might be a little extra work in the morning for you, or whenever you're having coffee. But I will tell you that once you get it down packed, it does become rather quick, relatively speaking, right? And it's just a great way to enjoy my coffee as I am having it in the morning. I don't have coffee any other way. I don't have a Keurig in my house. I don't have a Mr. Coffee Pot in my house. It's a pour over. I will say that when we have company, it's a little labor intensive because you could only really make one pot at a time because of measuring the water out. But my husband has seemed to have perfected it even a little bit for the two of us in the morning, in that he can get my water, get my coffee going, let it filter through, and when he gets to 350, then he puts his on and lets mine drip on the side as he's making his in the morning. And so, again, using my senses, I am seeing, my coffee being made, thinking about when you were, at home, what are you seeing when you're at maybe making your cup of coffee? Are you have the ability like I have, I can look out my windows and maybe see some of the birds in my yard, maybe see the city streets? Do you see maybe some kids on their way to school? Is there snow on the ground? I hope not for you all there. But just about to finish up here, and I'm going to make sure one last time I go around the edges to get that coffee down. It is at 350, and I'm going to turn off my water now, because I'm not going to make my husband a cup this afternoon. Just me for a cup with you all as we have our coffee. And so I'm thinking about, again, as this mindful cup of coffee that I'm having, I am now, I've smelled the coffee, I've heard the grinding, I have seen my pour over being made. Even I saw the ground as it was making the whole bean into my ground beans. I touched my mug, I felt my mug, and now I'm going to touch a hot cup of coffee, but it's not too hot because it's in my mug. And I just think about how differently I drink coffee all the time now. It is definitely something I take the time, I step back, I really enjoy what I'm having as I go about my day. And this is how I start my day, because I want to connect to my joy, which is having a cup of coffee. So I'm going to watch my coffee as it's dripping. And you want to wait until your coffee maybe it takes maybe a second or two in between each drip, and then you know that your coffee is done dripping. I have on my coffee bar a little container for me to put my grounds in, so I don't get them over to my trash can and drip coffee drippings with me. I picked this up at a little consignment shop. I don't know if it was a candy dish. I'm not sure what it is, but it just fits the motif of my coffee bar, and it seems to do well. Sometimes I give my coffee a little bit of a squeeze. I don't know about you, but I really like dark coffee. I really like dark coffee. I like strong coffee. But I will tell you, making this kind of coffee, and I just give this a stir. No grounds will have gotten in here from the paper. It keeps it in there, but it definitely just kind of, I don't know, it helps me a little bit to stir the coffee. So that's my pour over, and that's how I enjoy having a mindful cup of coffee. And I just want to remind us all again that joy doesn't have to be something that's big. And, we made our joy jars on a couple lives a few months ago. I talked about the difference between happiness, and happiness really is a fleeting feeling. It's a compliment you might get or a good meal. But joy is something that's cultivated over time that really does help us build the capacity to be resilient. And so this mindfulness opportunity to connect with something that brings me joy, which is a good cup of coffee, is something I will cultivate day after day after day. Typical morning for me when my husband is done making coffee is we have a little nook around the corner in the kitchen here that we will sit and have our coffee together. If it's the weekend and we have a little bit extra time, we'll go in our front room and sit in our chairs And it's a room that's surrounded by windows so we can see directly outside in our neighborhood. And it is such a peaceful place to start. It's just a nice way of reminding me to be in the present. It's such a nice way for me to know my body and I am okay in that moment. And so being able to use your senses when you make a cup of coffee, when you make a cup of tea, or like I said, if you're someone who has to get your coffee or tea on your way into work, maybe think a little bit differently the next time you walk into one of those shops. Maybe the next time you walk into a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donut or a Wawa or your local roaster or local coffee shop. Walk in with the intention that you're going to smell what is in there, that you're going to listen to the different sounds, the clanging of the coffee mugs, the people talking and chattering. Maybe you're here laughing in the corner, right? Smelling the coffee, or if you, again, like I said, if you have the luxury of having a nice sweet treat, like my donut. Oh gosh, you can smell that, right? That you feel the coffee cup, right? The weight of that coffee cup in your hands. You know, I'm going to taste my coffee. It's a good cup of coffee. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy your coffee as much as I do. And I'll see you again. If you are interested in ever making another cup of coffee or something else, please reach out to us at fifthwindow.com. If you'd like us to do a different type of, kind of focusing on different types of joy, again, please reach out to us, drop us a note here on our live, or whatever you want to do. We are happy to explore those options, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.